Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
Llévate más de lo que esperas todos los días con el nuevo McValue en McDonald's. Ahora puedes comprar uno y sumarle otro por $1. Así que cuando tu equipo favorito enfrente a sus rivales, enfrenta tus antojos con $5 Meal Deals. Y si estás corriendo para alcanzar el desayuno, corre al app para llevarte ofertas antes del cutoff. Tú decides, y con McValue, tu decisión siempre rinde más. Precios y participación pueden variar. BOGO $1 válido para un producto de igual o menor valor. Debe estar registrado en Rewards para ofertas en el app.
The terrifying story of a man that had to experience in order to be warned about the existence of good and evil. Welcome to another episode of the Chronicles of the Unexplained podcast. Today, I'm gonna tell you a very interesting and strong story. For security reasons, I'm gonna change the real names of the people involved. Hi everyone, my name is Juan. I have decided to share this story that has changed my life. What I will tell you happened on the border between Mexico and United States. To put things in context, at the end of 2006, Felipe Calderón took the presidency of Mexico. During his 6-year term, the government tried to get rid of the drug cartels. As a result of this, violence was unleashed. There were executions, kidnappings, since everyone knows that the power that these gentlemen have has no limits, and it was the way to protest against the government so that they would let them operate. In 2005, a friend and I partnered and managed to set up a small business. Unfortunately, it began to go very badly, since they threatened us several times. We were blackmailed, and we had to report the famous fee. For those who are not from Mexico, the criminals at the time operated in the following way. They went to the businesses threatening the owners or employees that if they didn't give them a monthly fee, the lives of the owners and family could be in danger. Their lives were at risk. And that we didn't even think to call the police, since they were accomplices in this type of practice. To make a long story short, we had to close the business because it was no longer convenient for us to be working to maintain those parasites. At that time, I was going through a very bad time economically. I was increasingly in debt because all my savings had been invested in that business. And at that time, there was not much source of jobs. The city seemed like a ghost town. Many businesses closed, avoiding these extortions. One day, in desperation, I called a friend who owns a motel. On the phone, asked him to lend me money. He tells me that he has a business to propose to me. He told me to come and meet him at a cafe. I arrived at the place and waited for him for about 1 hour. When I was about to leave, he calls me and tells me not to despair, that something got in his way and that he couldn't arrive, but he had sent someone to pick me up to talk about the matter. After a while, I see 2 men enter, and I see them somewhat suspicious. I didn't know if they were the people that Matias would send or if they were criminals who could be about to extort the business. I stand up from the table, and when I try to pay, my card was declined. At that moment, I see that they turn to me and tell me, "What's up, bro? Need cash?" It didn't give me a good feeling, but they paid my bill. which really wasn't much, but I thanked them. And just when I was going to leave the place, they told me that they wanted to offer me a business. I intrigued and asked if Matias had sent them, and they answered yes. When I asked them about him and the detail of that business, they only asked me if I'm interested in making money. I answered yes, but that I needed to know the details. One of them talks on the phone, and 15 minutes later, a car picked us up. They were two men and they were carrying weapons. I felt a little afraid, I must accept. I insisted asking where Matias was, but they don't tell me anything. So, as not to make the story so long, I get in the car and they take me to a place on the outskirts of the city. We arrived at a house that seemed to be abandoned. There was a basement where they had many bags, which had lots and lots of cash. The entire floor of the basement, it was full of those bags, and they told me, "Look, that's how lucrative the business is." I immediately thought what kind of business it would be. My first suspicion was illicit substances. When I asked them, "What is this about?" they tell me that I will have to trust them, that I needed to follow every single step as they will tell me. And they gave me $20,000 and a cell phone where they were going to contact me and I had to be available. "Tomorrow we are going to call you," they say. "You have to be ready to follow the instructions. You're gonna start tomorrow. We won't take a no for an answer. We know where you live." The next day, they called me on the phone. I had to see them in a specific place. When I arrived, they showed me a photograph of a man and they told me, "This is your target." They took me to a place very far from the city. They asked me to get rid of my car and some belongings. They gave me all the details of where to locate the target. Basically, the job was to get rid of that person. When I heard this, I felt that I was screwed, because I could no longer back down. Either it was him or it was me. I won't give you more details of how it happened, but I fulfilled the task. And so on, I had to do it with several people. Several months went by, and the truth is that I didn't feel good at all. I started to have very strange, very confused dreams. I tried not to get stuck in that, but there came a point when it was no longer just dreams. Things started to happen to me that my health was affected. While I was in bed one day, I started to hear someone sobbing. I got up to see who it was, but I didn't see anything. I went back to bed. I was barely falling asleep, and again, I heard that sob. As the days went by, this turned into more intense manifestations. Not only did I hear that sound or sob, but I started to see shadows. I didn't give it much thought about it, thinking that was my mind since I was medicated, because I had trouble sleeping. Time goes by until one day I had a dream where I saw myself walking in the middle of a lot of people, as in a procession or a march. Suddenly, everything is in total silence. There is no sound. You couldn't hear the bustle of the people. While I was walking, something tells me that I have to turn around. I ignore it and continue walking because I don't feel safe. There was something that told me that I shouldn't turn. I saw in the distance a large, wide gate, and I knew that I had to get there. I hurry up my pace and concentrate on getting to that place, since the other people who were walking started to stay behind. And I can hear now how those people sobbed as if in pain. I am curious to turn around, but I feel very afraid because I feel that something is chasing me. When I finally decide to turn around, I woke up suddenly breathless sweating and with a few scratches on my right shoulder. This dream became recurrent. I had it almost every week, and each time it caused me terrible anxiety. Although I had money, I was not happy. I didn't sleep well. I started with episodes of great anxiety because I knew that when night came, I wouldn't be able to fall asleep. This brought me a tremendous depression. Not even the medication helped me. Several times tried to attempt to end my life because I felt hopeless. I tried to live that lifestyle, to leave the city and to have a fresh start. I just wanted to leave all that behind. Even tried to escape, but I couldn't. I feared for my family's life. One day, while I was asleep, there was a shooting between drug cartels because there was an army raid. They grabbed us and took us to a place far from the city, and they threatened us to give them half of the money. Apparently, we were operating in one of their territories. During that shooting, several people died. I had 17 bullet wounds. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks between life and death. Or should I say that the death came to show me what I was doing wrong with my life. During the time that I was in the hospital, had the same recurrent dream, but this time was different. I saw the white gate in the distance, and I knew I had to get to it. I walked and walked, and as I was walking, that gate was seen farther and farther. At the same time, someone behind me prevented me from doing it and also forced me to turn around. This time I heard a voice that said,
"With me, you have the solution. Look at me, look at me, look at me."
This time I did. I turned to see who it was or what it was that was so insistently talking to me and asking me to turn around. When I turn around, I see a grotesque, terrible scene. It was an agglomeration of people clinging to the shore of a very large cliff type that seemed to have no bottom. It was like a giant well full of mud, snakes, and scavenger animals. There were devouring the living people, and you could see how an infernal heat emanated from the bottom while people were crying out to get out of there. Those screams stayed in my ears, and the faces of the people were the most terrible thing I had ever seen in my entire life. This scene was repeated over and over again as if it were a movie. I feel a panic that I never felt in my life. I start to move away from there, and I see in the distance the white gate. I'm aware in my dream that if I get to that place, I will be safe. However, when I try to return to it, I feel that I am being pulled towards that cliff, towards that bottomless pit, an atrocious fear that I don't wish on my worst enemy. At that moment, I hear a voice that tells me, "Not all is lost. Fight. You do it. You can do it." At that moment, I feel something very strange. I feel that I'm floating and I can see my body in the hospital bed, full of tubes and devices. I see the white gate in the distance. I see myself in the middle of those people wanting to go towards that light. It was very difficult to me to move, but I started to walk, almost crawling. When I reached that gate, it opens. From there, a bright sun came out, very warm. I walk and see a huge garden, with a scent as pleasant as when you are in the middle of a forest and the rain has wet the earth and you can feel and you can smell the fresh aroma of pine, which you can even feel it in your lungs. The sensation I felt was indescribable. I heard how the birds sang. I saw my skin shining. It was such a perfect place, with clear waterfalls, and there was a peace and a feeling of comfort that I never felt in my life. Suddenly, I start to hear voices in the distance, and I feel a lot of confusion. I feel how little by little those voices are getting closer. I start to open my eyes and I see many people around me. I was in the hospital. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was my mother, who later told me that someone had been visiting me. Apparently, it was Matias and 2 of his workers. It took another month before I fully recovered. Well, I never did it 100%. I lost mobility in my legs. The doctors say that I was very lucky to be alive because I had 2 respiratory arrests as a result of internal bleeding due to the bullet impacts. The lack of oxygen in my brain affected the mobility of my legs. My life took a 180-degree turn. God gave me a second chance because He clearly showed me that there are 2 paths and that we are free to choose which one to take. I decided to live that lifestyle and convinced myself that the minutes I was clinically dead, I saw the heaven and hell. If you like the episode, please share it with someone you know loves paranormal or unexplained stories. Follow me on different podcast platforms to receive notifications whenever a new episode comes out. Follow me on social media where I share previews of new episodes before they are published. Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube as Unexplained.Enigma. Facebook, Chronicles of the Unexplained. Thanks for listening and see you all in the next Unexplained story.